welcome back to Beyond the Lens Productions, your source for all things automotive. I will be continuing to try out some different videos over the coming weeks, so I would really appreciate it if you would leave me a comment below on them to let me know what you think. And don't forget to like the video and subscribe to this channel before you leave. Meet the Iraqi Taxi. Some of the details of this car are very murky, but I will do my best to piece them all together for you. Most of my knowledge comes from a friend of my dad's who worked at General Motors in 1980 when this deal between GM and the Iraqi leader Saddam Hussein fell apart. My dad's friend was also an owner of one of these cars for quite a few years, and contrary to some of the rumors that swirled around this, it was actually a very reliable and yet unique car. Back in 1980, the Iraqi government needed a fleet of cars, mostly for taxis, but some for government vehicles as well. And since the Middle East didn't have its own domestic car industry, they had to look elsewhere around the world. And it was rumored that Saddam Hussein really liked American cars, which were really in vogue at the time in the Middle East, so he looked to General Motors. However, at the time, Iraq and the U.S. were not on very good terms. So they would have to find a car that came out of final assembly in Canada. So the Malibu was chosen because it was built in Oshawa, Ontario at the time. 25,000 of these would be made, but only 12,500 would be delivered because Saddam would cancel the deal before the second shipment would ever leave the port in Halifax, leaving the remaining cars sitting there in a field near the shipping yard for about a year and a half. When it became apparent that these cars would never make it to Iraq, GM decided to sell the cars off at a very heavily discounted price to their employees across Canada. They would sell them for just over $6,000 Canadian, which in today's dollars is still only roughly $22,000. And by any standards, this is a fantastic deal. But GM didn't expect is that this would create a sort of car culture and rare collector's items as they're seen today. And as you can see by the images in this video I have captured at a car show not too long ago, some have been very meticulously preserved. This one has been modified a bit, as you can see by the shifter, but for the most part, it's pretty stock. So, what makes these cars different from other Malibus? Well, the first difference you'll see from the original is that on the rear fender near the bumper, it would normally say Malibu Classic. And in these cars, it would just simply say Malibu. When you looked inside, you'll see a 3-speed manual shifter on the floor as requested by the Iraqi government. AM/FM cassette deck, front bench seats, 200 km/h speedometer, and a heavy-duty vinyl cloth interior. Less obvious differences would be the air conditioning, which had to be beefed up significantly for the Iraqi hot weather, heavy-duty cooling system for the same reason, and a much beefier suspension. They would also be fitted with a 3.8-liter V6, putting out a whopping 110 horsepower, which is pretty underpowered by today's standards, but at the time, this was the early 1980s, and the government had initiated a lot of new environmental regulations and such, which has sucked out a lot of the horsepower that had been seen in cars in the 1970s. Anyhow, that is the Iraqi Taxi. If you know of any details I may have missed about these cars, please leave them in the comments below. I'd love to hear about them. For anybody that didn't know anything about them or very little, I hope you learned something. And I look forward to seeing you guys in the next video.